Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In the today's show, we will be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to what is going on with regards to the political situation of the country and also the kind of statements that we've been seeing coming out of the PTI's leadership, especially the PTI chairman, who has again spoken about his policy with regards to the TTP and other terrorist organizations within the country as something that he still stands by and talked about how this is something that is the way forward and the need of the hour in terms of rehabilitation and the way that we would like to engage with these organizations in the future as well, which is quite in contrast with what the foreign minister also in an interview gave a statement with regards to the appeasement policy that was adopted by the previous regime and the fact that that was a wrong approach and has been reversed by the current political setup, and they're trying to amend the ways of the previous regime. He also simultaneously spoke about how the Afghan Taliban need to be engaged, and this is the only way possible for Pakistan as well, and disengagement with them is not an option. We share a border with the Afghanistan, and of course the kind of threats that emerge from the country are also something that Pakistan needs to engage with the Afghan Taliban on. And so this is something that we're going to be taking a deep look at, especially with regards to the threat of terrorism that we face and how we would like to proceed with regards to this strategy and whether or not there is any need of a real re-evaluation on the matter. Of course, the National Security Committee had earlier spoken about a zero tolerance policy with regards to terrorist organizations and how we would like to proceed. But what this means, especially in terms of the statements coming in from the PTI chairman and their impact, and then of course what the foreign minister has also been referring to this time and previously as well with regards to perhaps a re-evaluation on the way that we would like to proceed further. So that is going to be the focus in our first segment of the show today. In the next one, we will be taking a look at the update on the Russian delegation, an 80-member delegation that is in Pakistan, and they are here to, of course, have important discussions on bilateral matters and also with regards to the 8th session of the Intergovernmental Commission of Pakistan and Russia that is being held tomorrow. There are a number of important issues that are being discussed, but of course the main issue for Pakistan is with regards to the energy sector and the possible discount that we can receive on the import of oil and other products. But this is something that of course has been given as a number that is still tentative or hasn't been discussed by the government. The minister earlier also on his trip to Moscow reiterated the fact that this is something that Pakistan is looking for, and a 30% discount was quoted, but we haven't really seen any number that has been agreed upon by Russia. Along with that, there is of course also concerns with regards to the kind of oil that is going to be imported since Pakistan only has perhaps the ability to refine oil, crude oil that is sweet and light and not heavy crude oil, which the Russian delegation seems to be pointing towards. So there's a lot in terms of uncertainty that still remains as to exactly how we are going to be proceeding further and what sort of an agreement will be possible for Russia and Pakistan. At the same time, the Russian energy minister has also given an exclusive interview to PTV World that was aired earlier today at 7 p.m. This, of course, was an important discussion with regards to where Russia and Pakistan's bilateral relationship stands, how they want to move forward in different areas, particularly the energy sector, and what all is Russia open to in terms of proposals of energy investment and, of course, CPEC as well. So we're going to take a look at all of that in our next segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, we have been joined by senior analyst Farooq Batafi, and we've also been joined by senior analyst Dr. Shtayaq in the studios with us, and also online we've been joined by Brigadier Haris Nawaz, who's also senior analyst. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining and being a part of the discussion today. Let me start with you, Dr. Shtayaq. Considering the emphasis that we have in terms of how we want to deal with the issue of terrorism, and this threat, of course, has been on the rise also since the U.S. troop withdrawal in Afghanistan, but particularly also in Pakistan since the TTP ended its ceasefire in November last year. And because of that, we have had to call a lot of important evaluations in place in terms of where we stand today, what sort of strategy we want to implement in the future, and how we're going to be dealing with this threat. Meanwhile, we see that the PTI chairman has discussed the fact that perhaps the policy that was adopted by him, or what he talks about in terms of rehabilitation, is the only way forward. How are we going to align this, especially in terms of a national consensus on the way that the issue of terrorism is going to be dealt with the political setup in Pakistan? Because of course there is the tenure of the current government, but there is elections right around the corner. How can we have a national approach? We of course had a consensus on this, but it seems now that there are different approaches being discussed.
Well, the thing is that the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, I think as an opposition leader and during his tenure as Prime Minister, and especially since losing his government, I think has been acting quite irresponsibly, because when we talk about, you see, what his government and he personally did to the governance, economy, and our core foreign policies with Saudi Arabia, United States, and above all China, you know, there are areas of criticism, and I think these issues have been highlighted already. But I think when it comes to terrorism, which is a problem that we have been dealing for the past, I think, several years and decades now, I think this is something which, in my personal opinion, is an act that cannot be forgiven. I say so because unfortunately, and it's quite ironic, that the more things change, the more they remain the same. You know, you can place yourself in 1990s in the war on terror throughout 2000s and 2010s, and it seems that 2022 is no different at all as far as Pakistan is concerned, because whatever goes on in Afghanistan, we are the first country to, you know, to see the implications. And I think TTP's revival was something that could have been avoided if we had acted sanely. And there are many drivers and enablers of the revival of TTP terrorism. Partly, you know, the US withdrawal and the manner it took place in August 2021, and the return of the Taliban regime, unlike the previous times when they had defeated the Soviet superpower. Now they have defeated the American superpower as well, so they are far more emboldened. And I think the critical point from Pakistan's perspective is that how we have conducted, you know, in the past several years. I think it was a grave mistake in the first place for the intelligence chief to visit Kabul to celebrate the victory of Taliban in August 2021. I think it was even greater mistake to offer amnesty to TTP terrorists. Above all, you know, this is not the price that we pay for killing 70,000 Pakistanis. And the most, you know, heinous terrorist act, you know, that Army Public School in Peshawar in 2014. So a state never negotiates with a non-state entity, and that also, which is happens to be, you know, committing hyper-terrorist acts in Pakistan. So once you negotiate with a non-state actor, which is not permitted, you know, morally or legally to use force against especially unarmed civilians, which is what terrorism is all about, then obviously you show your weakness. So currently what we are dealing with, I think above all from the American, you know, like this baggage that Afghanistan carries, from the recapture of Kabul by the Afghan Taliban, but above all what we are seeing today, I think are the glaring mistakes that our leadership has made in the past, that we have to deal with TTP once again after completely defeating it several years ago.
Right. Brigadier Haris, considering that this is something, as Dr. Ishtaq was pointing out, we've already dealt with and have been successful in, and now the re-emergence obviously points to a lot of flaws at our own end that we need to correct. But in terms of where we stand now, how do you think that this course correction will actually take place, especially since there is a lot of resurgence within the country as well? There have been a lot of areas where the factions have been perhaps welcomed or given given free access to. And because of that, now perhaps the situation we're in, we might have to deal with the situation as we did many, many years ago. Is that something that is required now to be able to eliminate this threat, or can we proceed with a different direction, especially when we talk about the way that the country is dealing with the fact that there is now, of course, the Afghan Taliban regime in Afghanistan?
Sana, the issue is when Taliban, their government came, and we thought that now is the time, since Taliban has said that we will not let anyone use a territory against any foreign country. So we were very happy they will honor their word. But I think nobody realized that they have the same ideology. That ideology means Afghan Taliban and TTP. And they've been fighting against Americans and against Pakistan, and now the same ideology they are following it. So still we tried it. We said, okay, we pushed Afghan Taliban that now you make them sit and then we have a dialogue because they thought they're going to be unending war. We have to sit across the table like Taliban's. Afghan Taliban sat with American and then finally they reached to certain conclusions. So, but then they gained a lot of time. They got time for to reorganize, recoup. I think, they might have recruited more of TTP persons and become more force. And then, of course, Americans left. You remember, lot of unattended weapons and ammunition which came into these terrorist organizations. So these were one of the factors that led to re-emerged. But now what I feel, whatever is done. Now we have to be very clear. We have to tell Afghan Taliban two-pronged strategy. Number one, we tell Afghan Taliban that this is what all we have been doing for you and still we are doing for you. What all we have done it internationally and bilaterally also. And this is what we expect now from you to at least push Taliban, Taliban, Pakistan towards our side so that we can then handle them. And then our forces are there, they are well trained, battle hardened, fully know they understand how to carry to fight against the terrorists. And we have eliminated almost terrorism from Pakistan. So we have to go for two-pronged strategy. But then for that, we need to have a national harmony. And for that, there are two forums. One, we have APC, and all parties get together. Like when we have incident APC, then we sat down and then find a national action plan. Second option is that now we take this issue to the National Assembly and to the Senate. We have a joint section, we have debate, and let's reach to our national consensus and pass a resolution which goes to the board. It is heard by one Taliban, and then we carry out proper strategy like national plan
Right, but
against
Brigadier
the
Harris,
side.
given the current political circumstances and the kind of statements that we've been seen coming out, can we expect that sort of consensus to exist? I mean, one would assume that this is an issue that we should have that consensus on, but it doesn't seem that that's the case.
Sana, the issue is at least we go to the public representatives. Second, it is prime responsibility of government of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have given the mandate to run the government and take important strategic decisions, whether it goes to National Security Committee or it goes to the National Joint Section of National Assembly and Senate. But then you have to take action. You should not worry somebody liking, somebody not liking. It is a survival of Pakistan, sovereignty of Pakistan. Third is that we have to speak to Afghan Taliban that okay, we find a big difficult. We have been hosting 3 million Afghan refugees. They are the nursery for those things. There are a lot of facilitators over there. Please take them back. And that for that we might have to talk to American and United Nations. So when we put pressure on Afghan Taliban, then they might have to push them to okay, either you leave Afghanistan or then don't operate against Pakistan sitting in our territory. Now these are the plausible options, but along with that, I personally feel Afghan Taliban's need to be financially sound. And for that, we have to push Americans that please defreeze their amount which has been frozen. And then because politically inclusive government with all ethnic representations, number one. Number two, financially strong Afghanistan will have more rate of government. And when the rate of government is there, then they can deal with all these terrorist organizations like it is Daesh, then it is Al Qaeda, it is TTP, and Islamic Turkish movement, which is there in against China. So these are the
Right.
options, but we have to make a policy. We stand, and then we take bold decisions in the interest of Pakistan.
Right, absolutely. Farooq, you've mentioned many times before about how we need to focus first on Pakistan and its issues and what goes on here and how we are going to deal with that. But of course, it's also closely linked with what goes on in the neighborhood. How do we align both these issues and prioritize them in a way that we can also engage with this threat at home and then continue with the kind of engagement that Brigadier Harris is pointing out in terms of being able to support the Afghan Taliban in a way that their international obligations are fulfilled, and we also protect our soil from any threat emerging from Afghanistan.
Right, Sana, I'm going to beg to differ with Brigadier Saab because I think that whatever Afghan Taliban do within their country is none of my business. I couldn't care less. The only thing is that there was a promise that was made, and on air repeatedly before Taliban took over, when I was actually agitating this point that they are going to provide safe haven to TTP, several ex-security officials actually came on here and told me that they will not provide any sanctuary and Afghan soil will not be used against Pakistan. But that has been going on for quite some time now. Yesterday I asked you 4 or 5 questions, right? Because Imran Khan Sahab keeps on giving interview that he had plans to rehabilitate 40,000 people, some of them very battle-hardened terrorists sitting in Afghanistan in our tribal areas. So my question was there any de-radicalization program? That I asked yesterday, I'm again asking this. Secondly, the question was who actually decided to pull or dismantle all the pickets in former FATA. Third, that I'm adding today is who allowed the Afghan Taliban to come in with all the weapons in those areas. The fourth one is regarding fence. Why were we not manning, the fence, and why was it dismantled and the government at that time looked the other way? The fifth one, contingency planning. We knew Afghan Taliban don't see killing of innocents as terrorism. So what were we doing about that? So these are the questions that nobody actually seems to answer, and I think the blame lies on the Prime Minister at that time. Now the question is, what are we going to do? I think inside the country, we have had an NSC meeting, and it is clear that it was decided to revive the Apex committees. I think we have to do that, and the second thing is focus on the border alone. Take care of the border. It has been fenced a huge chunk, 94-95% is already intact. All you need is, if you remember, the US, Chairman Joint Chief of Staff Committee actually came to Pakistan, and we took him to the border. And after that, we heard from our foreign minister that America is ready to help us take care of the border. So if there can be any important technology that can be used, satellite use, drones, anything else, do that. And then every time somebody infiltrates, take it up with the Afghan government and call them out. Their economy is none of my business. If their currency is more stable at this moment than Pakistani rupee. So I don't care about that. I don't need to carry the burden of another country. All I have to do is take care of my own people. Imran Khan Sahab says that 40,000 people, either you can line them up and kill them, or then you can rehabilitate them. Actually, there's a third way. If they are sitting in Afghanistan and if they don't want to come back or actually surrender their weapons, then ask Afghanistan to adopt them and make them Afghan nationals. Why do I care?
All right. Dr. Ishtiaq, considering that these are important questions that Farooq pointed out, especially in terms of the way that we want to be able to reevaluate ourselves and look inward as to how we need to proceed further. And so it also involves the issue of accountability. And the PTI channel, of course, points towards accountability issues, among other things. But when we take a look at this particular issue and the way that we have dealt with this, any government has been able to deal with this, is there also a mechanism of accountability in terms of being able to analyze ourselves and make those critical choices for the future?
Well, first of all, I would like to appreciate Farooq that he was candid enough to pose these hard questions. I also wanted to raise them, but I was a bit careful, because this is a state TV channel,
Yeah, but we are talking about Pakistani
go ahead.
citizens being slain, right?
So the thing is that, but I would also beg to differ on one point.
Okay.
Because when you deal with this very complex relationship, there are certain areas which are really functioning well. The only problem that we see is in the security sphere. We don't mind, whatever they are doing to their girls or women. Obviously, we are part of the international community, but we have a principled stand. We don't interfere in the internal affairs of neighboring countries, or for that matter.
There I
any other
agree with
country.
you. I agree
We don't-
regarding
that's their
women
system.
rights.
Let them adopt.
Yes.
But what bothers us is that our security is directly linked to the peace and stability in Afghanistan. It's just not this year, but for the past 40+ years. And I think enough is enough. We have to secure our borders. I agree with him. As far as accountability is concerned, as I pointed out right in the beginning, appeasement with non-state entities committing terrorism against unarmed civilians, and for the past several decades, and we've got figures, we have got economic losses also alongside. So therefore, any civilian or military personnel, in any leadership capacity, if he or she has acted irresponsibility on this question, on the question of security, I think there has to be some accountability. We can't pass the buck on to the Americans or to the Indians and say that all conflict in Pakistan is because of external factors.
Right, there has to be accountability.
There are
but is
bitter
there a mechanism
internal
for it?
realities. I think this is the time, and this time, Sana, is very, very conducive also. Let me pinpoint a few positive elements right now.
Okay.
I see, there is no need of APC right now, because the military leadership, the current civilian government in the center and 2 provinces, they represent, all the political parties except one that has appeased the Taliban, one that has created this all ambiguity and, was not clear enough, and I think perpetuated this situation to the extent that we are in a huge mess right now, economically and in security also of late.
Right.
So this government consisting of all parties, I think there is a unanimity and there is complete consensus in dealing with this danger. Secondly, and which is far more important, and if you compare it with history, is that there is also now complete public support, I would say, not just across Pakistan, but especially in areas which suffered because of terrorism, be it Swat or former tribal areas, against Taliban, against any form of terrorism, whether in the name of religion or any other cause. And thirdly, I think the military leadership, which obviously drives our security policy, and when it comes to India and Afghanistan, our regional security policy as well, I think it is resolute. It is absolutely clear how to deal with this rising monster, in my opinion.
Right, but Dr. Ishtiaq, I need 2 clarifications with regards to 1, is there a mechanism for the accountability, and 2, when we talk about, of course, the fact that where we stand today, there is unanimity in the government and different parties, and of course the military leadership as well, but is that going to be something that is going to still happen and is sustainable in the future as well, even post-elections, because political situations change, and we're talking about a previous regime and the way they took this particular approach, and so can we also talk about with absolute certainty that this approach that we decide on today will be followed?
Well, the thing is, at least this government, in my humble opinion, will continue until the elections are held. And after the elections, obviously the people will decide who becomes the Prime Minister and who comes into power in the National Assembly or in the Provincial Assembly. And I think given the kind of economic mess that Pakistan is in right now, and the rising danger of terrorism once again, I think next weeks and months will decide which way the people choose the next leadership and government.
Okay.
And I'm sure, I'm confident that the people ultimately will choose the government which will resolve economic crisis, which will ensure political stability, and which will ensure that never again any government or any leadership is lenient towards any organization or individual which picks up arms and targets unarmed civilians in this country.
Right. Brigadier Haris, considering that this is the approach that is being emphasized, but I want to also understand that whether or not this means that we have a blanket approach towards the various terrorist organizations within the country. There's, of course, the issue of the TTP, but there are others that may join hands with the TTP or have their own particular agendas as well. Are we taking that distinction into account, or are we going ahead with a blanket approach for all terrorist organizations?
You see, another problem is that we go for one difficult situation and then we forget all. We have to sort out with once for all. Whether we sit down in the National Security Committee and there we finalize, because that is the right forum where security people are there and the government of Pakistan is there, more important persons are there. They have to sit and evolve a policy which should hold good for Taliban, Taliban Pakistan, and internal different religious groups which at times find difficulties. And then we sit and work out a strategy that need to be done. And the national action plan, when it was worked out, I think it is a very good effort. And second important thing is that the accountability. Now, accountability, the problem is that initially you used to remember we had for 2 years military courts, and there was a lot of speedy trials, and they were punished. But then high courts, they were lenient and they were let free. Or then we have a special terrorist code, but they can be held in military cantonments for security. Their names are not disclosed because their family, they are worried, and that's why at times they have to take different decisions because of the potential threats they have. So that is another thing. Third is Afghanistan need to be peaceful. We must realize, and for that we need to engage our regional countries because they are directly affected. I mean, Russia, China, Central Asia, and Iran, including Pakistan. Now, they have to sit down and work out how Afghanistan has to be peaceful because our problem is that we don't have connectivity with Central Asia when we go for CPEC. Then we have a problem in Balochistan, it is because of Afghanistan. So that's why we say that we need to consult Afghan Taliban, then we must help them if they want us. Otherwise, we tell them these are the problems. You have to solve at your end. We have not that all the time we keep feeding you. So take independent decision, but then this is what is our national security environment, and we can't afford it because seriously it's affecting economic prosperity. If CPAC if it doesn't come up, that means we have not been able to do. Then Balochistan is very troubleful. So these are the things we always say that we have to ensure, and for that, regional countries, then peaceful Afghanistan. For that, we evolve a strategy at National Security Committee level, or we sit anywhere, or we go, if we don't go for APC, then also we have a public representative in the National Assembly and the Senate. But we have to work it out. Don't delay it. Every day we are delaying is going to cause us life of our soldiers and our civilians.
Right.
Regarding border
Yes,
security,
go
the
ahead.
one thing, border security is that though at times they show these videos, they are very old, and these are when the Ashraf Ghani government was there. So we have to be mindful that also.
Right. Okay. Farooq, of course, there is a lot in terms of what needs to happen on ground and the way that we need to perhaps deal with the threat most urgently. But in the way that we have over the years been able to deal with the threat of terrorism, has there also been a way in terms of dealing with the abstract aspect of terrorism itself also, especially when we did in fact succeed in countering it initially, and now of course we're back in the situation? Does that mean that these measures were not taken at all, or perhaps were not impactful enough?
No, actually, Sana, I'm very clear, and I keep on hearing these terms. We need national consensus. How many times are we going to actually have national consensus? In 2014, when our children were killed in APS Peshawar, at that time there was a national consensus. People were killed even after that also. If somebody have actually gone backwards on their positions, so what does that mean? Does that mean that we have lost consensus, or the fact that they are Taliban apologists, right? It has to be very clear. The second thing is a strategy. Of course, this country has been fighting terrorism for 20 years. Do you think we don't have any strategy? National Action Plan was the strategy. Why is it that parts of it are not being implemented as we speak? This is very clear. Regarding what you said about accountability, here is the fact about Imran Khan Saab's government. I understand that there were military leaders involved as well. There was a gentleman who was intelligence chief, and then he had to be posted out, and Imran Khan Sahab, citing Afghanistan, did not want to remove him. Then he was posted as a Corps Commander Peshawar, right, 11 Corps. And and these policies at that time also, it is clear that it was Imran Khan Sahab and nobody else who was calling shots in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, on border of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and even in Afghanistan. So when it comes to accountability, there's only one man, no military person, no policeman. Everybody is being hunted and hounded by terrorists right now. There's only one man who's responsible, and that is Imran Khan, and he has to explain himself. Unfortunately, every time everybody interviews him, including BBC, and I was sorely disappointed because there is no confrontation. Nobody seems to challenge his basic premise, asking him, how could you allow this many people back with weapons without any kind of deep radicalization or surrender on their part? So these are the facts which are there, and we have to look at it. At this moment, I think national consensus is an overrated concept. Right now, the country has had enough wounds on its body that we should be alert, and I'm sure everybody can fight. De-radicalization of the society is also important. For that, we keep on pushing for peace with India, other countries. But whatever happens in Afghanistan, I was a child, Sana, when we started hearing Afghanistan is in trouble and we have to take care of it. This country has become such, my own country is in such shambles, and somehow we keep on talking about somebody else. Why? It is not my lookout, whatever happens there. I am totally with Dr. Ishtiaq when it comes to human rights and women's rights, because I want similar kind of value system in my country, that women, I'm father of 2 girls, and they should be given all the rights. But why is it that we should be shouldering the embarrassment that the Afghan Taliban have become? Why should we take care of any of that sort of things? And regarding regional mechanism, immediately after Afghan Taliban takeover, we did go ahead with similar kind of mechanism. But the problem is there are 2 voices, one India's, one Pakistan's. If you mean regional, then because India is also influential in Central Asia, we'll have to find a way to work together. That can't be done. So I don't care about day after tomorrow when whatever happens in Central Asia and how we become prosperous, because right now my economy is bleeding everything to Afghanistan. Our wheat is going there, our meat is going there, our dollars are going there, our currency is going there, and their currency is better off, my currency is bad. Why should I care about them? Why should I not take care of my borders? And that's all.
Right. Brigadier Haris, considering that this is an important factor for where Pakistan stands today and how we want to proceed further, can you also emphasize on the way that we are going to be able to keep on engaging with the Afghan Taliban, especially how the foreign minister also points out that perhaps disengagement is not an option for Pakistan, and how we're going to go ahead with it despite the fact that the obligations haven't been met, or the fact that the Afghan Taliban themselves are not able to deal with the terrorist threats emerging from there. And also add to that what I was asking earlier regarding the issue of terrorism as well, in terms of the way that it is thought about, or the way that it is understood, and not just how it manifests itself in the form of organizations, in terms of how we deal with it.
You see, another point is we have been doing wrong thing. We have been sending jargas and so many tribal peoples. It has to be officially engaged with the Afghan Taliban. Our official delegation should go and they should talk with the authority that this is what we mean business, and it is seriously affecting our national security. Not only that, it is affecting our economy because of Balochistan issue and then of course CPAC. So we have to go with very firm, and then with government representative, or
But Brigadier Haris, haven't similar steps been taken already?
No, I think I have seen jargas going, ulamas going, but no government official has gone. Less Ina Ramani Khan, that's all. And you see, I feel that they don't they like a lady only going there and nobody else is going. So we have a good combination of our officials. They should go sit with the Afghan Taliban, and we tell them our reservation. We are not interfering in one issue, but their internal problems directly affects Pakistan. That's why we have to talk to them in that context. And then because it is going to spend more in Pakistan, the more terrorist activities are coming in Pakistan, we will have more internal issues. That then
All
there's
right.
other splinter groups are in Pakistan. They are also going to create problems for us. That's why we have to take it as a totality, not one. Step one is the TTP, and then we go internal issues. It has to be a wholesome strategy to work on it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Brigadier Harris Nawaz, for being a part of the discussion and joining us in the show. That's all that we have from this particular segment, but we're going to continue with the next one with regards to the Russian delegation and how it's going to impact possibly the energy sector of Pakistan. Welcome back to the debate. We're now going to be taking a look at the Russian delegation's visit to Pakistan, an 80-member delegation who's come to attend the plenary session of the 8th session of the Intergovernmental Commission of Pakistan and Russia that is to be held tomorrow, but also simultaneously, of course, engage on important bilateral matters and agreements, especially with regards to the energy sector that Pakistan has been eyeing for quite some time now, especially the discount on the import of oil and other products, and of course, the way that we can support our energy sector and the kind of conditions that Pakistan is facing economically to be able to deal with the shortages of LNG and other issues. So in this regard, this particular visit is important, but how exactly is this going to proceed and impact our agreements, or the possibility of any discount is something that still remains to be seen. Dr. Ishaq, there are a number of issues, of course, in terms of whether or not we're going to be seeing a discount or not. We still don't have a number. And then when we talk about the import of crude oil, it doesn't seem to be the one that Pakistan refineries will be able to process. And so because of that, what do you think will be the possible impact that is going to even come out when we talk about any sort of agreement or any sort of a support in the energy sector from the Russian delegation?
Well, you see, for the last many years, there has been a discussion about the pipeline, that will be laid from Karachi port and the rest of the country, and the Russian, perhaps gas or oil, can be shipped through, that pipeline across Pakistan. There has been CASA 1000 electricity, this across Afghanistan. There has been this for the past, I think, 26 years, TAPI pipeline, gas pipeline from Central Asia or Caucasus to up to India. So these, all of these projects, especially the last two, have been hostage to the successive Afghan wars. And I don't think that, under the Taliban government and the revival of terrorism, not just in Pakistan, but I suspect that it will have some kind of a regional wave as well. Because in Afghanistan, terrorism, I think deliberately has been revived by the Americans in the process of withdrawal, and creating what is called now Turkestan Islamic Party, which is a collection of Uzbek and other groups which are targeting, going to target China and sabotage. ETIM has become now Turkestan Islamic Party.
Okay.
There are around 2,000 terrorists of various organizations. And this is a mutual concern of Russia, Central Asian states, and China. And obviously, broadly speaking, Sana, Pakistan should always have a multi-pronged foreign policy, dealing with great powers, including United States, Russia, China, and regional countries, including, of course, India. If we were able to resolve our differences, especially over Kashmir. We should not run our foreign policy with vis-a-vis America and Russia as far as the Ukraine war is concerned on zero-sum basis. We pursue our interests, and currently, obviously, there is a acute energy crisis facing the world. So is the case in Pakistan. And I think the Russian option is great if we are able to secure some kind of concessions, and receive Russian oil, maybe processed elsewhere, because remember, not only India is the largest recipient of Russian oil, ever since the Ukraine war began, and Indians are processing it and supplying it to the rest of the world. So are the Saudis are doing through Egypt. So we can always obtain, through third countries, whatever, options are available, including that of Russia. But remember, we are in a situation where our economy is very weak. It depends crucially upon the IMF program. The United States government has a certain clout over the IMF, and therefore we have to balance, we have to navigate this very difficult terrain in the coming days and ahead, and that does not mean that we pursue, various options with the Russian government.
Right, and the gas pipeline project that you're referring to was also changed a number of times to be able to avoid the US sanctions. So we are doing that part in terms of being able to be mindful of that. But in terms of the options that means remain for us, Farooq, especially with regards to the kind of economic challenges at home that Dr. Ishaq was pointing out, the IMF issue, then of course global concerns, the Ukrainian conflict and others, there is a lot of factors that are and variables that are impacting this particular arrangement. But we have seen that this is possible as part of a series of developments that have taken place, especially since the visit of our delegation to Russia and then this visit as well with the delegation coming in. Does that account for something, at least in terms of what we're going to be seeing from the Russian side, and what the Russian energy minister also spoke in the interview with PTV World, where he emphasized on this relationship and also the potential and the desire by Russia to be able to engage with Pakistan?
Right, Sanam. Remember Romeo and Juliet, the term star-crossed lovers somehow actually crept in. So the relationship between Russia and Pakistan is star-crossed for some reason. I don't know why. Pakistan tried to build relationship since its inception, but we saw that then Liaquat Ali Khan got invitation to the US, and this matter fell through. Since then, there has been many speculations, especially immediately after, Afghan war, Afghan jihad, when Russia actually pulled out of Afghanistan, and then the Soviet Union fell apart. At that time, too, we kept on trying to actually build relationship. There was an opportunity to go there and study. So I visited some parts actually in those days as well. And since then, I have this secret desire to see better relationship between the two countries. But when it comes to cooperation between Pakistan and Russia right now, there are many moving parts which are blocked. For example, Pakistan and Russia might have in 2015 agreed on this long LNG, 1100 kilometers LNG pipeline. But the problem is it has to actually pass through Wakhan corridor, which is in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is at this moment in bad shape. Similarly, when you talk about cooperation between the two countries, Russia can export a lot of things. In fact, recently we imported wheat from Russia, but the problem is that Russia is heavily sanctioned. And finally, because we cannot have the pipeline right now, at least we can import LNG, through ships. But the vessels that might be needed are overbooked at this moment. So that is going to delay that as well. Having said that, I believe that Russia, I've been pushing for this idea since 1996 when I was writing on foreign policy. And I've been saying that Pakistan and Russia's relationship is important, and we should explore it more and build it more, because now that the Cold War has ended, we should have that relationship. Unfortunately, recently, because of Ukraine war, my perspective on what Russia is doing is a bit different from what Russian fans would see. But having said that, I think this relationship in the long run has nothing but new heights to explore. And I agree with Dr. Ishaq that a third country can actually facilitate the process. Iran has signed an MOU with Russia. The problem is, again, Iran is also under sanction. Otherwise, Iran's gas and petroleum products are used in our border towns, so we could have actually imported from there as well. Similarly, there could be a route through China. But when you talk about Afghanistan, I don't see that kind of stability ever coming back to Afghanistan, or for that matter, whosoever is head of Kabul or in charge in Kabul, they will always have a very negative and aggressive approach towards Pakistan. We saw that Afghan Taliban had some kind of tentative agreement with Pakistan on Wakhan corridor, but then their own ranks actually stood up and kind of trashed the whole idea. So I don't think whosoever is in Afghanistan is ever going to cooperate with Pakistan. Will have to find other ways.
Okay, Dr. Ishtiyaq, considering of course the issue with regards to the way that we're going to be interacting with Russia is also something that we'll need to balance out in terms of our relations with other countries, especially the US as well. But what the Russian energy minister has also referred to is his will to be able to look at proposals regarding the joining of CPEC. And of course, CPEC is a very important integral project for Pakistan. Can we actually proceed with Russian involvement within this project and be able to do that with the kind of balance that is needed in our relationship with the US and other countries?
Well, Sana, things have really changed, over time. After the Soviet fall, the United States emerged as the only superpower, continued waging wars in Iraq and then in Afghanistan. And then obviously in the third decade of its, sole superpower status, we saw its demise in Afghanistan. So in these years, if you look at, say, the Middle East, the US-Saudi relationship is no more as it used to be. In reaction to the Ukraine war, the GCC and Saudi Arabia in particular, and along with the UAE, have not bothered to toe the American line. And in fact, contrary to American expectations, who wanted them to, raise the production, they in fact went for the cut down. So, which facilitates Russia, by the way. So, Russia obviously has a conflict there in Europe, directly with NATO, indirectly with NATO, but this is, as they say, is the Cold War 2.0. China has been neutral, so is all the Gulf countries, which always sided with the United States. So we did. So now is the time actually when newer powers are emerging, and we are very lucky as a country that we have this CPEC program, which wants to expand not only to the Gulf through the Indian Ocean, but also to Afghanistan, across Central Asia, to Iran, and obviously it is integrated not just through SCO, but also bilaterally and all other multi-pronged ways.
Right.
And I think I see the future of this entire Asian region, specifically Central Asia and South Asia, in the Chinese fold if we go, along with Russia and other countries. I think that is a progressive future, that is an integrative future.
Okay.
It will bring about lasting peace in this region and perhaps in the world.
Okay.
But if we go along with history, with the US-led geopolitics, which is war-prone, that I see total destruction along the way.
All right. Of course, that we're going to be looking at that and how this situation evolves, where we hope that whatever it does happen in terms of the way it's going forward is good for Pakistan. We're able to strike the balance that is needed. Thank you very much, Dr. Ishtiyaq Ahmed, for being a part of the discussion. Thank you, Farouk, for being a part of the debate. As always, there is much in terms of what we need, both at the economic front, especially in the energy sector, and then, of course, in the issues that we're dealing with regards to terrorism and political instability. We only hope that tomorrow is a better day for all of these issues. That's all that we have, and we'll see you tomorrow.